Welcome to Finding Your Leadership Superpower, part of the Rutgers Business School Signature Leadership Series. Today's webinar is offered in valued partnership with Tech United New Jersey, who's helped us promote this program. Corporate sponsors, promotional partners, and individual contributors are helping to raise awareness and funds for the 1,000 Laptop Challenge. Our students and their families have experienced financial hardships as a direct result of COVID-19. And the move to a remote learning environment requires unanticipated technology investments for them, such as laptops. But you can help. We will close the webinar with more information about how you can be part of this important initiative. The Rutgers Business School Signature Leadership Series is a relatively new learning opportunity that brings you lessons of resilience, resourcefulness, responsibility, and reinvention through bi-weekly conversations with thought leaders and business leaders from across industry spectrums. We're excited to chat with Bob Skea of Discovery Data so he can share glimpses of his everyday real-life challenges as well as lessons from his leadership playbook. Here to help us get to know Bob better and facilitate today's discussion is our moderator, Ralph Morales. I said this earlier, and I'm going to try it again. Ralph is Principal, Cost Segregation Group, National Tax Department, Accounting Periods, Methods, and Credits at EY. He also serves as a valued member of the Rutgers Business School Military and Veteran Advisory Board, having spent 9 years in naval intelligence. Ralph is a popular mentor turned faculty member in the mini MBA Business Management for Military and Veterans program. Ralph earned his undergraduate degree from NJIT and then went on to earn an MBA from right here at Rutgers Business School. And here you see Bob Skea, CEO of Discovery Data, since what a rough time to take over a company, February of 2020. But he's had a 30-year career in a succession of executive positions in global organizations. You'll definitely hear more about that as he shares his history and stories with you today. He's also a board member here at Rutgers in the athletics department for the Leadership Development Program. And he is also on the board of another entity called the All Stars Project of New Jersey, and I think those will pepper in as well. But at this point, I'm going to hand things over to Ralph to get the discussion started. Thank you so much, both of you.
Thank you, Margaret. And thanks to all of you out there for registering and joining us today in this Signature Leadership Series webinar. We're going to be having a very thoughtful, I think, impactful discussion today. Margaret went over the 4 R's, the Rutgers 4 R's. That we usually, that's our theme in Rutgers Business School: resiliency, resourcefulness, responsibility, and reinvention. I think a lot of those themes we're going to hit upon today. So Bob, thank you for joining us, and welcome.
Thanks so much, Ralph. I appreciate it, and it's great to be here.
So let's jump right into it. I mean, typically what we like to do with these, with these webinars is really start at the beginning of somebody's leadership journey, right? We're going to be totally unorthodox here. We're going to throw that out the window, and we're really going to start with your latest adventure, which is taking the helm at Discovery Data as its new CEO. So again, let's pause there. Congratulations on the new role. I know you just started recently.
Thank you.
So obviously a very unusual time period for everyone, right? We've had pandemics, a lot of turmoil around the world in the US. So I guess how I'd like to begin is maybe tell us a little bit about that transition into Discovery Data. How has the lessons that you've learned really throughout your career helped you as you've transitioned in during these really challenging times?
Yeah, thanks, Ralph. And it was a very strange kind of beginning for me. First of all, I want to point out that I'm repping hard with the Rutgers R, right? Okay, got that?
That and got my mug.
Go.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go. We'll do the fight song later at the end. Um, yeah, it was really obviously just unprecedented times for everyone. It goes without saying. But I came into Discovery Data as a CEO on February 23rd, and then March 13th was the Friday when at least we and almost everyone else said, that's it, we're gonna shut it down. I had 2.5 to 3 weeks in the office with the team before we did this. And I'm really thankful for those couple of weeks, frankly. It allowed me to meet people, and there's no substitute for face-to-face. As powerful as video conferencing can be vis-a-vis telephones, the face-to-face meetings, when we were allowed to do them, were helpful to me. But then essentially 2 weeks in, we were all home. And I needed to start to run the company from afar over video for many of the firm that hadn't met me personally, and start to not only, of course, I need to learn the business, but I quickly needed to shift my priorities toward understanding what people were going through. And it became a very human event, a human business event, versus an operational or financial business event, which is normally the way you think about business. Because the team, everyone had different perspectives. And I think in times of crisis or stress and fear, you need to lead differently. And so, what the things that would normally have been important definitely took a back seat, and to some degree have throughout, and other things came to the forefront. Happy to dive in further, but the first thing is really understanding the importance of communication. And in times of crisis, when people are remote, they're fearful for their health. They're also fearful for their jobs, and they don't understand what there's a new operating order here. How am I supposed to perform my job in an environment that I've never experienced before? And so as leaders, I think it's important that we understand that they're certainly not reading our minds, and almost hyper communicate more often. I like to use the term hyper to over rotate towards something that needs to be moved and fixed. And I think hyper communication out of the gates was really important to make sure people understood what was happening. And for me, being new, they didn't really know me. It was a vehicle for me to build trust. And so, open, frequent, authentic communication was really a mode for building trust with the team. And you could poll them as to whether I accomplished that, but that certainly was my goal, and what became the priority for us, certainly in those first 30 days, which were just very strange for everyone in a business context, but particularly strange for me, having just joined this team.
Yeah, I guess one of the things that I think a lot of leaders struggle with, right, that you brought up is being empathetic, because there's a fine line there, right? And happy to get your thoughts on it, but there's a fine line between being empathetic and, to use your word, maybe sometimes hyper empathetic, right, where you're so beholden to someone else's fears that you are afraid to make decisions, or maybe you make the wrong decisions, or you don't think through the problem. So again, just one of those things that happy to get your thoughts on, Bob. But how do we as leaders really show that empathy, but still do the job that leaders have to do day in and day out, which is reason through the problem, be analytical, and at the end of the day, make a decision while still really feeling those emotions from your colleagues?
Yeah, that's a really great question. Finding that balance is not always easy. In that first 30 days of this crisis, I clearly over-rotated toward empathy. I think in these times, folks, we react. My team will react in a way that's innate to them, in terms of this. Stress induces fear, and it also doesn't doesn't lend itself to clear thinking, frankly. If you've got a military background in an absolute, minute crisis situation, you have to stay extremely level-headed. And I think in that first 30 days, like, I couldn't get my team to focus on business. And so I think the wrong thing to do would have been to start pressing on the numbers. Where are we on sales? Where is this renewal? What's the pipeline look like? That clearly had to take a back seat. And so those first 30 days, I would tranche it down this way, Ralph, is first 30 days was all empathy in terms of leadership style. You really needed to make sure people understood, like, this is going to be okay. We are a healthy company, right. And we have to be there. I think the next phase is then, probably the second 30 days was around, and by the way, that has to do with customers as well, right? In talking to our customers, we wanted to make sure that we were being, very understanding of their situation and what they were going through and how can we help them. So we reached out to ask how we could, kind of gratis, help them with their end goals and their customers. So I think that was a big part of it. That next 30 days, then you say, okay, like the world didn't end. It's still terrible out there, but now how do we run the business? What's the new operating cadence that we need to? Because at the end of the day, results matter, right? Results matter.
That's right. And
so, to me, empathetic leadership is really genuinely caring about your team and an individual and their outcome, their professional objectives, what they're trying to achieve, how I can genuinely, authentically try to help them develop and achieve their goals. And we will have that conversation throughout. Let's talk about, what need to be done. My favorite definition of leadership, and it sounds a little crass, but I think it really fits the bill in almost every situation, is getting people or my team to do what I need them to do, what we, the company, need them to do because they want to do it. That's the important piece. And you only get to that last piece through motivation, through having people buy into, we're going to take this hill together. When we get up there, we're going to stick that flag in the top of the hill together and say, we did this, right? And they want to have to, they need to, you want them to take that hill with you very willingly because they know at the top it's going to be great. To the extent you use any other motivator or they're not bought in, it probably isn't going to work. So to me, that's the empathy thing. It's not so much, bending over backwards to make sure that they have everything they need so much as being a genuine, authentic partner and helping them drive their careers and having those open conversations about achieving mutual goals together.
Yeah, no, absolutely great thoughts. There's just so much here, right, that you could dive into. I think you brought up a lot of different attributes, right, and a lot of different things that leaders need to be really good at. I think communication obviously is one of them. Building trust, right? I jotted a couple down. You mentioned the military experience. And I think this is where it's very similar, the thinking under pressure. A lot of that is just really muscle memory, right? And as leaders, we kind of look back in our experience and say, okay, this is what my experience has taught me in these particular situations. And if you do that often enough, if you're consistent with your own leadership style, eventually it does become second nature, right? And it's something that you can do at sort of the drop of a hat. So that's a very good point. So this brings us back a little bit now, Bob, to the title of the webinar, which is Finding Your Leadership Superpower. And you've again brought up a lot of great attributes and a lot of superpowers, right? As I like to call them. One of the things as leaders, at least that I struggle with, and I'm sure everybody does, we're really mere mortals, right? We're not superheroes. We're not leadership superheroes. We're not all really good at everything. I think you have some leaders that have very desirable qualities and they're very good at some things while others are lacking in certain areas. Maybe your thoughts a little bit, Bob, about finding those blind spots, right? Those sort of leadership blind spots where I think that's sometimes very hard for people, is to sort of step back, self-analyze, and say, okay, I have a blind spot here, right? This is an area where I'm not really good at. How do you first identify those blind spots, and have some self-introspection? And secondly, how do you really focus in on them and try to hone them? What can you do to improve some of those different attributes that we all need to be leaders?
Yeah, superpower thing is interesting. There's a phrase in the saying in the software business that it's actually not a bug, it's a feature. And I think oftentimes we in self-interest, being introspective, think of our DNA, our composition, as potentially being not helpful when in fact it could be. So this superpower thing to me is really about, and you mentioned muscle memory, for sure. That's why in the military you guys drill over and over and over and over and over again, because stressful situations breed fear and tribalism, and you're going to go back to what is most innate, right? So when you've trained enough, and so really, leadership styles are no different, and that is, leadership styles are a function of our unique life experiences, all of us, of our unique stories, right? Where we're from, what we've been through, and we bring all that every day to our teams, and frankly to our kids and to our families. And so your superpower as a leader is probably derived from that, whether you consciously know that or not. And sometimes it's something you probably might think is a bug, and it's not. So for me, personally speaking, I'm a city kid. You and I talked. We'll probably talk Bent or later. We went to rival high schools. We're both Hudson County, New Jersey guys, and almost had a built-in network before we even knew we did. So we'll talk about networking later, perhaps. But I'm personally a city kid. I had a very different experience relative to education. Have other life experiences that have informed the way I interact with others. And frankly, for years, those things had me believing that they were drawbacks. And to some degree, I experienced something that's very, very common, especially for new leaders, or every time you get that new job. If you took the right job, you're probably uncomfortable for a while. And so you have this imposter syndrome thing that comes over you that says, wow, I'm not worthy of this.
That's
and
right.
so, I think, sorry, I lost my screen there for a second. You get this imposter syndrome thing. But after a while, as you develop confidence in that regard, you start to realize that some of these things are actually attributes that you can bring to your leadership style. So in my case, my leadership style tends to be one of coaching. I've done a ton of coaching over the years. It tends to be one of sponsorship of others. And it just evolved into this, and only over the years have I realized that. But it's really the thinking that the aggregate life experiences that I've had together develop a composite of my kind of leadership style that I can bring to the table. Yours would be, we have a lot in common, but we're also different and very different in other ways, as we've discussed. Your background is quite different from mine in a number of ways, and so you'd come at it from a bit of a different angle than I would, which is fine. So it's really about the superpower thing. Is really about embracing what it is about you that has brought you to this point, and really leveraging that. The other thing you touched on, though, is important, is having enough self-awareness, I think, to realize what you're not strong at, and having some level of humility in that regard to A, adapt, B, learn, and C, kind of admit it when you're out over your skis, right? And so the other part of your superpower, hopefully, is understanding I need really great people around me to help us get there. I'm not hiring smart people to tell them what to do. I'm hiring smart people so they can tell us what to do.
Right.
That's kind of I think the Steve Jobs thing. Understanding what your limitations are. So embracing what you do well, and also embracing others to complement supplement, if you will, what you don't have strengths in to get to the outcomes you need.
Yeah, and I think that was a great explanation, Bob. I really do like the embracing your experience, right? Because everybody comes at this a different way. So I think for all of you out there on the webinar that are currently leaders or are looking to lead a bigger group, really understand there is no equation, right? It's not like I'm an analytical guy, so I kind of like, 2 + 2 = 4, but I think leadership is one of those things that um, there really isn't a magic formula to it. It's really built from your experiences. To your point, everybody kind of approaches it in a different way, for good and for bad. And again, we just need to be self-aware about those instances where, okay, I need to improve in this area, right? So let me realize that I have that issue, and let me improve upon it. But really embrace the experience, right? Is the
Yeah.
motto there.
Exactly. There's a lot of different ways to skin a cat, right? And from a career point of view, or even personally speaking, a lot of different ways to get from point A to point B. And when I work with young people at the college level or the high school level who might have non-traditional backgrounds, who might have non-traditional, kind of circuitous routes to get there, someone who's on the 5 or 6 year program in college, like, it's okay. I think a lot of young people in particular put a lot of pressure on themselves and compare themselves to others who may have gone to the other school or a better school or got that different job. There's more to it than that. And it took me, frankly, a long time to realize that the people in the room, I went to Rutgers Business School at night, right? So no, I worked with a lot of people in my professional background that went to, fantastic, if not Ivy League schools, and a much more traditional route. Like I had some self-doubt in that regard until at one point I realized, hold on, wait a second, that provides me with perspective that they could never have.
That's right.
So when I hire people, I hire for a range of experiences, non-traditional kind of backgrounds, not exclusively, but I certainly don't discount that. And I would encourage everybody as leaders here or people earlier on in their careers to embrace your story and actually figure out how to turn that into a superpower. It's not a bug. It's probably a feature. Just haven't figured out how to leverage it yet.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. That's a great point. So I'm looking at some questions here, and I know we've decided to probably aggregate the questions at the end, but there are a couple of good ones that maybe we pause here and ask, maybe a quick one. So this is actually a good one right here, Bob. Who is your role model in leadership and why?
Good question. Let me answer it this way. I try to take lessons from others that I work with and put them all together. I've worked in programs where they say take what you need and leave the rest, and I think that I wouldn't point to necessarily one particular individual. I've had many great leaders over the years that I've tried to emulate, and I've learned so much from. Some I've worked with for a long time, some I've worked with for a short period of time. And even some of those short period of time folks teach me a lot. I have three rules. I need to learn, trust, respect, and learn from my leader. That's it. Trust, respect, and learn from. And that last one's really important as long as we keep learning. So, I don't want to call out individual names of people that I've worked with necessarily over time. There were a number of them at Chase who taught me some things. A number of them at a company called Reuters that I worked with that taught me things. I'm still in touch with those people, by the way, almost all of them. My last job at Dun Bradstreet, our CEO at the time, actually, I will call him out. He's the CEO of Audible right now. He taught me a lot about inverted pyramid leadership and kind of understand and communication to the team. He had a very large organization and communicated very effectively. So there's a lot of different things that I take from different leaders over time. I've read lots of books on leadership, obviously, like we all have probably, and there are some great examples out there in the military and others in business. So I wouldn't call it a name per se. I think there are attributes and lessons to be learned from near everybody. And I would also say that if you're working for someone now, or if you see a leader or you're around a leader that you don't trust, respect, and you can't learn from, then you might want to rethink it. And why don't you give me a call? We'll figure out what you do next.
That's right. And I think the other interesting thing, Bob, and I'm sure you agree with this, it's not always leaders that you look to and say, wow, that's a great thing to emulate, but hey, that's something not to do, right? I can't really, I can count on if I had, more fingers, but I've come across a lot of leaders that might, again, be good in a certain area, and then in another area, you really have to pay attention, because you have to, going back to understanding your blind spot, you got to be like, hey, that is an attribute that I don't want to emulate, right? So I think for your leaders, you got to take the good, but also understand there's some bad that you want to maybe leave behind.
Yeah, outstanding point. And that's right. And I've seen leaders that I don't want to emulate. Leadership is not very different. I said I coached a lot, and it's not very different from coaching a fifth grade basketball team. And Susie needs to be motivated differently than Johnny, because they have a different way of thinking about it. And in business, it's the same thing. One of the questions I like to ask people, whether I am interviewing with them or whether I am interviewing someone else, and I did this just this week with a young person, I said, how would you have me motivate you? And so that kind of gets to the key, right? Like, how would they receive it? I've definitely seen examples of leadership styles that certainly I didn't take to, but I also thought were counterproductive in terms of my definition earlier of because they want to do it. Because fear is a terrible motivator. It's a terrible motivator. You might get what you want, but the other person's going to be looking for a different job at some point in time. And so I think there are many positive lessons to be learned, and some others, like, that's what you don't want to do. And back to coaching, I have kids that played sports. Once in a while, they'd play for a coach that did something, and I'd say, well, when you have kids and you become a coach, now you know exactly what didn't feel good as you went through this. That's what not to do.
Yep. No, that's a great point. That's a great point. And so this is actually a pretty good segue into a conversation that we had, Bob, back when we were prepping for this webinar. And it's a presentation that you've given in the past that relates to the Wizard of Oz, right? And I hope everybody out there has seen the Wizard of Oz. And by the way, if you haven't seen the Wizard of Oz, you should. It's a classic. But I thought it was actually a very clever way it's almost a metaphor, right? For leadership attributes, for desirable attributes, and maybe some that are not so desirable. Even though we're not going to throw the slide up, which, by the way, are pretty cool slides, but let's not throw these up. Maybe you can walk us through some of the main characters, Bob, and some of the things that they kind of remind you of, right? Again, attributes that are desirable, some that are not. But again, just a great little lesson in leadership.
Yeah, sure. It's kind of a funny story. I was it was a few years back, and my leader at the time, who's another great leader, by the way, I learned a lot from him also, Josh Perez. He said, listen, we've got an hour to fill. It was like a sales kickoff meeting. We've got an hour to fill at the end of this, and we'd like to do something that was, relatively entertaining, but also business-like. And I don't care what you do. I'll give you a license, but just don't be boring. I said, okay, thanks. So I set out to think, geez, what could I do that people would relate to, but would drive a message that was meaningful, but wouldn't be boring. And so I created a presentation, and you've only seen actually the relevant slides, because there are others around trivia around the Wizard of Oz, which are actually fascinating. I'll send it to you afterward. There's some really interesting anecdotes about that movie. But as I thought through the Wizard of Oz, and it's not, by the way, others have done this, so it wasn't just wasn't my brainchild. Others have done leadership lessons from the Wizard of Oz, but I took it and put a spin on it relative to what we were doing. And so, and I'm a singer as well, so I did a little number in there, trying not to be boring, and they didn't boo me off the stage, so it went okay.
We're not going to do that here, though, right, Bob? We're not doing that here. The singing and the dancing.
I don't think so. I haven't had quite enough espresso for that. But if you think about leadership lessons from the Wizard of Oz, it is a metaphor for a lot of what we do in business and maybe in life. And it actually, some of it maps to the 4 R's that we talk about: resilience, resourcefulness, responsibility, reinvention at Rutgers and Rutgers Business School. And so if you think it through, it's really, if you think about each character, first of all, the team building. So as leaders, we build teams. And I've already referenced how important that is. Like, I need to put people around me that don't, I can't be intimidated by them. Rather, I want people that are smarter than me. I always try to develop people who can take my job. I'm trying to work my way out of a job so I can do something else and they can take my job. And if you think about it that way as a leader, you'll always hire really talented people. So that's the first thing. It's kind of team building. So if you think about how Dorothy went through, she was walking toward the Emerald City and she was meeting people along the way, the characters. She was building a team to help her achieve her goal. And so there you go. And it's team building and it's resourcefulness. So that would be the R we talk about, right? The resourcefulness of using everything available to you to get there. The second thing would be having a vision. As leaders, I'm a CEO now. I think we often, as leaders, underestimate the shadow we cast. And people want to be led. I want to be led by my board. I need feedback, right? So we tend to underestimate the importance of that. And so having a vision and articulating that vision with persistence and commitment, right? And if you think about the movie, and I did this as a bit of a shtick, right? Dorothy never wavered, not once. I just want to go home. I just want to go home. And she knew what she wanted to do, and she knew she was not going to be compromising in getting there. And so that vision, persistence, and commitment, that's the resilience we talk about at Rutgers. That's my favorite R of the mantra because, downtown Newark Business School, Jersey thing, right? It's perfect. But that persistence and commitment to a cause, articulating the vision is really, really important. The next thing is, she runs into the scarecrow, right? It's thoughtful leadership, right? And so, that thoughtfulness and almost empathetic leadership to some degree is really important. And I did a little shtick there around the wizard the scarecrow, who said, I'd unravel every riddle with every individual in trouble or in pain, right? So that's kind of the coaching aspect, the coaching and thoughtfulness of how can I help my team through what's coming up. I'd unravel every riddle, right? So that's the thoughtful thing. That's the coaching aspect of it. The empathetic is really the generous and caring, and that's the Tin Man. And if I only had a heart, right? And so, right. So there's a high empathy quotient there. That's it's really important. And we've talked about that a little bit here, especially with what we've just gone through in stressful situations. You have to be very empathetic to the team. And then the last one, of course, is my favorite. And I'm a Leo by zodiac sign and a July baby, and I love the character. So the lion, of course, was tremendously. He was actually a scaredy cat, of course, but the theme was courage and to be courageous and to be fearless and to be bold. And now he had to overcome that, of course, with the help of Oz. But that's the last thing. And if you put all this together, team building, vision, thoughtful leadership, caring leadership, being fearless and bold, and you brought that into a composite of a leader in any industry, in any field, or any coach, I think you'd have a pretty good composite of someone who is an effective leader. So that's what that was about. And I think there's a lot of, if you double click on those, and I had, different anecdotes for each, and did a little song and dance thing. But if you double click on them, you'll find that there's a lot underneath. And it's actually, I don't know if the creators of The Wizard of Oz knew this, but I think there's a lot of metaphors there for the way we run businesses and the way we can be effective leaders.
So let me ask you a question, Bob, sticking with the Wizard of Oz. By the way, I'm never going to watch that movie again without thinking about these leadership attributes for each of these characters. The wizard himself, right? The man behind the curtain. What would you attach to, what attributes did he have, right? What were his attributes? Maybe not desirable attributes, but in your mind, where do you think he fits into that puzzle, into that leadership puzzle?
Well, fantastic, right? So some of the things we've talked about already, because it was really just a man behind the curtain. And so where's the authenticity, first of all?
Right.
Which is so important. I think one of the most important attributes to any leader is just be yourself. People just want to hear the straight skinny. That honesty is going to build trust, and that's what you need. So he wasn't being authentic, first of all. Secondly, how was he, in this case, trying to drive that? Well, with fear. He was scary as hell, right?
That's right.
And we talked about fear as a terrible motivator. You know, remember Dorothy and we're all blown back with the scarecrow getting all right. But like that wasn't helpful to the cause. But underneath it all, right, when the curtain got pulled back, right, he became a much more authentic and frankly caring, thoughtful, and warm-hearted individual who helped them. And so I think there's a lot in there, right? You talk about just him for a while, and I didn't use him in my presentation, but authenticity, fear as a poor motivator, and then ultimately figuring out how can I in fact help these folks achieve their goals, each of them individually, and then Dorothy in the aggregate, to achieve that vision, which again she was unrelenting with. And had been so resourceful about it and responsible in the way she did it. He's also a pretty interesting character to think through.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's the first thing that popped to my mind when I saw that presentation. Actually, was what can we learn from the wizard? I guess the Wicked Witch of the West might be like COVID, maybe. I don't know. Right?
Yeah, I
She's
didn't
chaos.
go there, but yeah, chaos. That's how do you deal with chaos exactly?
That's right.
And unforeseen interruptions and unforeseen issues coming from different directions.
That's right. So we have a quick question here, which I'm going to shoot out. So this is from Ladon, and I'm going to maybe butcher this name, hopefully not, Afrasiabi. So shout out to Ladon. Thanks for the question. What are your biggest lessons from failures?
Yeah, there's an expression there's no failure, right? You either win or you learn, and that's hard to think through in the moment. But I've learned more from challenging times than I have in any up times. And I would say the biggest learning lesson for me in a professional context was through the economic downturn of 2008 to 2010. I was running a small software company that sold high-end wealth solutions to financial services company banks. And who was hit hardest during that crisis was banks. And so it was kind of like the analogy I used back then was like selling upscale window dressings to someone whose house had burned down. And you kind of like look at my fabric, and it's like, you see my house is burned down, like what, really? And it became very, very challenging. And so while the business wasn't what we had hoped it would be, and I was there 6 years. I started in 2006. I left in 2011. So 2008 happened right in the middle. And we started like this, and we had a great reputation, and we were going strong. And then all of a sudden the market hit, and we just went like that and cratered and then stabilized. And so what did I learn? We had, over 100 employees, a relatively small company. We had to go from 100 to 25 to 12. And I wouldn't call that necessarily the company a failure so much as how did we handle how did I learn through adversity? That was really challenging. Trying to keep the customers that stayed with us, our revenues went down 75%, but the customers who stayed with us, how did we keep them happy? How did we work with the board? I learned more during that period of adversity than any executive MBA could ever give you, notwithstanding the people on the line that are. But it was just real world, gritty resilience, but at the same time needing to take care of my team, who was concerned every day that the company was going to shut down. That from a professional point of view, that 18-month period to maybe 2 years was the most I've ever learned about myself and about how I was wired, and about leading through crisis management times. That was a very challenging period.
And I guess it's always very interesting when something like that happens, that we are more resilient, I think, Bob, and you may agree with this. We're more resilient than we give ourselves credit for, right? For the most part, whether as leaders or just as human beings. I think you go through a situation like that after the financial crisis, and you think to yourself, wow, like, it can't get much worse. And then all of a sudden it gets worse. And you sort of power your way through that. I think innately we all have the ability to do that. Again, some of it goes back to the muscle memory that you talked about, right? Just having the experience of having done that before. Hey, I've been through troubled waters before. I know I can get out of it this time. But it really does show the resiliency of really the human spirit, right? That we can, that we're usually stronger than we believe we are in situations like that.
That's right. That's right. If anybody out there is a fan of or worked out with Sean T, he'll tell you to dig deeper. Can't Hurt Me, the book Can't Hurt Me by what's his name, David, what's his name? I mean, what he was able to accomplish just by digging deeper is amazing. Ultra marathoners running 100-mile races, like really,
Right.
Like, the human body will actually adapt, physically speaking, and potentially mentally as well. And you know more about that than I do, Ralph, to whatever you kind of train it through. And so, yeah, just when you think it can't get any worse, and it does get worse, you actually have that fifth gear that you can shift down to muscle through it. And having that fortitude, again, it's the resilience, the fortitude, the persistence to muscle through it. And importantly, in leadership roles, bring others with you. I think that's a big differentiator.
Right. That's right. So we said, and let's pivot a little bit into a different subject, still on the topic of just timely leadership advice. And I think we'd be remiss, all of us, if we didn't mention the other sort of challenge that we're going through right now, which is really diversity and inclusion. And obviously something close to my heart as a minority, but how to increase minority representation in industry. In the C-suite. How do we go into those inner cities? I know it's something you're very passionate about. Like you mentioned, we're both Hudson County kids, right? Grew up in, not the shiniest cities and suburbs. So I know you're very passionate about it. I know you work with a charity that Margaret mentioned in the beginning. Tell us a little bit about that charity, what you do for them, Bob, and really, more importantly, what are they doing with those kids to really build them up to a point where they can be very competitive in industry?
Yeah, thanks, Ralph. It's such an important topic, and I think many of us, in the past month or so, seeing what's going on, want to help, and even me, and I'm involved. I reached out to my network and I said, guys, what more can I do? I think we all think about what can I do? How can I help? Yeah, I'm on board, but saying it's not enough, feeling it's not enough, you have to have action. So that'd be my first thing. I would say that I learned very early on that diversity and inclusion in a business context is tremendously important. I was at Chase Manhattan from 1986 to 2001, making me older than probably anybody on the line. But I was on a diversity council at Chase in the mid to late 90s. That was early days for a large corporate institution to have a diversity council, and I was on that early. The question came up later: who are some of the leaders that you like to emulate? I worked for a person. A man at Chase. His name was Ken Lay, and he was a man of color. And he talked to me about diversity, and I have never forgotten this example or metaphor. He said, the thing about diversity is we all want to be comfortable, but it's a blind spot for us because we will go toward what we know, our muscle memory. You want to be around people that make you feel more comfortable. Why would I want to feel uncomfortable? I want to hang out with the people in my neighborhood because that's my neighborhood. He said, it's like Diversity is that thing, that car that's off your back right wheel when you're driving. You can't see it. It's literally a blind spot. And in order to overcome that, you need to lean forward and look out your side view mirror. And I'm sure this doesn't look good on video. But you have to look out your side view mirror to make sure you see it. And if you're not leaning forward and looking in the side view, you won't notice that you're not including others. And I love that. I mean, it's like, wow.
It's great.
Right? Never forgotten that. And so the problem right now is that in times of crisis, we all go back to our tribalism. Like, okay, this is what I know, this is my muscle memory, and this is my comfort zone. That's what we all want. And so I think it's harder to be an inclusive leader in times of crisis because there's unconscious bias that comes in because of the stressors and the fear that we have. And so I think all of us need to, again, be conscious of that and over-rotate toward overcoming that unconscious bias that even I'm feeling now. So that's the point. I think in terms of what we can all do consciously, I'm a city kid like you. You're from Hudson County. You're from some ritzy area in Hudson County. I don't know what that was. I don't think I've ever been there. Was it Bayonne or something? No, it wasn't Bayonne. You're from Union City?
It's the real Jersey, Union City, New Jersey.
Yeah, Union City, exactly.
Yep.
I went to Hudson Catholic. You went to St. Peter's Prep, rivals back in the day.
Prep.
Not so much anymore. Remember, I was from Duncan and West Side in Jersey City. Some people on the line might know that. St. Aloysius Parish, very much a city. My dad used to say we're going to Bayonne Park. We thought we were going to Yellowstone, right? So that's how,
no geysers. Where are the geysers?
Yeah, where are the guys? That's at like the Hackensack River. We literally thought that was like gorgeous. So in any event, but clearly a city kid, right? And so to me, I worked hard, but I also had a network. Like I knew people in the city. My family had a network in the city. My grandfather was a cop. All these connections and networks. And there are many people, young people, in the inner city that don't have that network advantage. They don't have that head start. And so that, to me, that's where it starts. They don't know what they don't know. They don't have a network that they're able to develop. And they also probably have, and you can't blame them, a fair amount of intimidation from what they don't know and probably lack of confidence. And so, to me, what we can all do in these times is just get grassroots and work with people in the inner cities to help them develop that courage, develop that context, and develop a network, and show them that that's not a bug. What you're going through now is actually, that's resilience, that's strength. I mean, I love that you're from downtown Newark. That's unbelievable, right? And so that's what it's about. And so the All Stars Project is a national organization, and if you look it up, you'll see we're in San Francisco and Dallas and Chicago and certainly New York. But also, I'm on the board of the All Stars Project of New Jersey. It started 20 years ago in Newark. It does amazing work. They've since started. They asked me to join. I said, "Listen, I'm a Jersey City guy. I don't think I can do the Jersey City thing." They said, "Well, we're starting a Jersey City chapter," so they roped me in.
They roped you in.
They wrote me in, but I'm so happy to be working with them. I've been with them for about 6 years now. I've been on the board for a couple of years, and it's an after-school development program for the kids who want it, and it's invariably people of color, many African Americans, but also people of various color and stripe, and it's for the kids who want it, and they work hard, and it's an after-school development aspect to it. There's a big performance art that I think help builds confidence. And we talked a little bit earlier about, my being a singer's background, and also there's a 14-week program where they have to show up twice a week and they have to wear suit and tie. And if they miss, they're out. So there's a responsibility component to that, and a reinvention of self component of that I think lends itself well to this conversation. Last thing I'd say is, I've been lucky enough to be invited to some of the graduations, and I've spoken at one of the graduations in Newark, and to see the transformation of these kids from the day they walk in. And when I was at Dun Bradstreet, they walk in, they wouldn't make eye contact with you, what have you. And by the end of that internship, of that 14 weeks that they're working with the program, the level of confidence that they have is amazing, and some of their stories when they tell it at graduation literally will bring you to tears. It's just amazing organization. Shade McDaniel is the city leader, does amazing work, and everyone there does. Gloria Strickland was a big part of it in the early days, so I'm honored and privileged to be part of it. But from my perspective, and for those that are listening in here, I mean, it's not enough for us to say, yeah, I empathize, I get it, or sure, I can relate, or how can I help? You have to jump in. You got to help somebody. You got to do it, and you got to do it today, right? So if you want information on that, you can reach out directly to them or me. But we'd love to have your help, and I think it's such an important part of what we all need to do societally to make sure people get to where they need to in life.
No, that's great, Bob, and it sounds like they do great work, and thank you for that. Like you said, I think the network is huge, right? I think if we teach kids how to network properly and really widen their circle, definitely very helpful. So Margaret is apparently saying that it's time for live audience questions. So we're going to put that up. I'm going to scroll through here, and I know I've already asked a couple, but let's see if there's other ones here that, if I can increase my window size. Gotta love technology.
Absolutely.
Okay, so this one is from Sarah. Long question, but let me see if I can get through this. There's a gigantic increase in anxiety and fear from the general public right now, and from employees that have continued to work or employees that have been out of work at home. Biggest fears in the upcoming months is school and childcare. Obviously, that's a big issue, right? With cities now closing down again, how are parents going to get back? So the question is, how do you recommend leadership through the rest of the year if employees cannot work or have to remain at home due to school closing and have to work remotely? How do you keep them motivated? How do you keep them engaged? So I think it's some of the same, some of the same issues that you touched upon in the beginning, right, Bob?
Yeah, it's some of that. You absolutely have to continue to communicate. We here at Discovery Data opened our office last Monday, July 6th. We're based in New Jersey, down near the Jersey Shore. And we opened our office last Monday, July 6th, but we did it in such a way that we wouldn't have more than X people. And we did it in such a way where we had all the PPE. And we did it in such a way that we importantly said it's completely optional. It's really important to understand, for leaders to understand that people have, again, stories, life experiences. Who's taking care of their grandparents every day? Don't want to be exposed. Got it. Who has young children, would like to be here but can't because the day camps are closed? Got it. Whose son has a respiratory ailment, serious respiratory ailment? Got it. Stay home, please. So we need to be very receptive, certainly empathetic. We overuse that word here, but receptive to that. So our mantra here at Discovery Data is it's completely optional. And I would say that we're going to come back into the fold organically. And so far, so good. A handful to 10 to 12 to 15 people come in on occasion. They might bounce in, bounce out, and that's exactly what we wanted. Because frankly, some people cannot work at home and feel more comfortable being in here. I think more generally, something that was in that question that Sarah was getting to was, how do we motivate those people that are still sitting at home and want to be there or can't be there or what have you, or don't want to be there, but don't feel like they're part of? That's really important. And so again, that comes back to communication and inclusion, and probably a reminder to me as well that I need to do more kind of Zoom video conferencing for the whole company, which I did a lot throughout the early days of this, but less so recently. I probably need to get back to a rhythm. Trying to include those folks who can't or aren't ready to be back is probably the key to that question as leadership, and it's again about communication.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. There's another one here from LaDon that I think is a good one, and that is your outlook. What is your outlook about the trends that are here to stay post-COVID? Right, we've all heard, and at EY, I work a lot with real estate clients, and obviously real estate right now, a lot of companies are rethinking going back to the office, and if they do, how do they go back to the office? So, I definitely remote working is going to be one of those things. But what else do you see, Bob, as far as paradigm shifts that are going to happen because of this pandemic, maybe even post-COVID, right? It's the new normal, really.
Yeah. So the obvious ones like working from home is not going away. So, remote working, I think what we've all found out is, at least certainly at Discovery Data and many others I speak with, is we can be just as effective from a business contact being remote for the most part, with some exceptions. And I don't think everyone realized that. So people who had managed or led by in the office, 8 to 5, FaceTime, not necessarily what is
Right.
needed. That's not going away. The implication of that is, I think, commercial real estate in particular is going to be challenged. I know I have space here for probably 30% more than I currently have, and on a go forward basis in that new normal, I probably have 50% more capacity than I need. And so, what does that mean when this comes up? I hope my landlord's not listening in, but it's just the reality. There are other things that will be impacted, though. Those are some of the obvious ones. I think, pertinent to this audience, and higher education has needed to, colleges and universities have needed to pivot very, very quickly in the last 6 months, last 4 months, in ways that they never had to before. It's forced them to be nimble. It hasn't been easy. And I have a son still in college, so I'm seeing how they're going about it. Delivering curriculum online was new, and certainly down at the grade school level as well. But I think in particular for higher education, that's an industry that is going to fundamentally shift in the way A, it's delivered, B, the way it's consumed, which I think is good because people who ordinarily could not attend a certain university now probably can, but it's definitely going to change the financial mix, the commercial mix, that is what one's able to charge, the on-house, and what the cost base of delivering that service will change as well with the advent of real-time, video. So and e-learning, if you will. So that's a big one. And of course, hospitality is changed forever. It's never going to be the same. I think airline industries and others, it's overused, the new normal, but there certain industries from a financial point of view are going to be impacted. At the same time, last thing I'll say here is, I know we're short for time. What we find in these times is that new industries there will be outgrowth and green shoots of businesses that are spawned from these types of things. So it looks like horrible. This too shall pass. You'll find new industries that come up through this. We can't see all of them yet. They're coming.
That's right. No, that's a good point. Even when it looks, even at its darkest days, right? Dawn is right around the corner. So there'll definitely be opportunities. So with that, I know we've reached the top of the hour, Bob. This has been a great conversation. We could probably go for another hour. So I do want to say thank you. I appreciate you again joining us for our signature leadership series. Margaret, hand it over to you for final thoughts.
Oh
Thanks,
my
Ralph.
goodness. Thank you both so much. That was great. I think it was as fun, amazing, and energetic as we had prepared the audience for, and maybe even more so, because Bob did start belting out a few of those lines.
We got him to do it just a little bit.
Great questions from our audience. There were a couple that we didn't get to, and Bob, I'll share those with you in case you want to prepare some type of response in another manner other than here on the webinar, but thanks to the audience. That was great. I alluded to something earlier, which was our 1,000 laptop challenge, a relatively new component of our signature leadership series. And this is about our students and their families who have endured financial hardship since COVID-19 really rocked our worlds. They quickly encountered a remote learning environment that required technology such as laptops that they simply can't afford. Corporate sponsors, promotional partners, and individual contributors can help by donating to the 1,000 Laptop Challenge Fund. You'll receive an email with more information about how you can be a part of this important initiative and a link to the donation webpage as well. And we appreciate any of your generous support. I did not update our title here, and I apologize for that. But we do have a really exciting topic on TV advertising in a digital age. And that is coming up in 2 weeks with Nicole Pangis, who's the CEO of Ampersand, and that's a data-driven TV advertising, sales, and technology company. And I promise that it will be more than TBD. But I just wanted to let everyone know that we do have an exciting lineup coming beyond that as well, which you can see here. But we want the series to continue to meet your needs, so please stay online for just a moment longer as the webinar ends, because you'll immediately see a very brief survey about today's event. And finally, as I mentioned when the webinar began, a link to the archive version of this recording will be shared via social media and emailed to registrants. It'll also be on the Business Insights page of our website. So thank you so much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day. And to our presenters, thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you.